A person hears an unpleasant remark and chooses to ignore it, not only ignore it, but not disturbed by it. And another person hears an unpleasant remark and is immediately offended. So what is the reason for the difference? In the first case, the person that is not offended and also ignores it is actually in a state of a spiritual state of prayer. And maybe they put up with somebody because they love them. People say, unpleasant things to each other. They don't mean it, and it doesn't spoil the friendship. I mean, it's not good, but so the person hears it and ignores it because they love that person. They have special affection for someone, and so they overlook the unpleasant remark. Dorotheus tells of when he first went to the monastery, as a young man himself, and there was a monk there who was before him. And he noticed this monk was young, and he was always being abused by people shouting and being rude to him and just being very unpleasant. But he was very calm. He seemed to not notice, and eventually Dorotheus saw him one day and said to him, exclaimed, "Can you tell me why you are so calm when people are so bad to you, horrible to you? Why are you so calm? What can I learn from that?" How do you respond inside when people are rude to you, basically? How do you respond inside? How do you feel inside? He said, "Oh, it's nothing. I just ignore them. Their behaviour and their talking and things is just like the barking of dogs." Dorothea decided not to continue the conversation because this man was totally impressed. In other words, you cannot ignore a bad remark and be disdainful. "Oh, well, that person's an idiot, so don't take any notice of them." It gets said, we say it sometimes, we think about somebody, but this is disdain. It's called disdain, and we should not be like that towards people. So what are we trying to do? The cause of this disturbance is because we blame other people all the time. Most of the time, if something happens to us, we blame somebody, or we blame a situation. Very rarely do we blame ourselves. And the fathers teach that this is what we should be doing. There was a bishop, Archbishop Theophilus, Bishop of Alexandria, and he went to see St. Anthony. And on the way there he stopped at the monastery, and he said to one of the monks, who obviously was a holy person, he said, "What's the best way of being a monk? What's the best thing that you do?" And he said, "The best thing I do is to accuse myself, not to accuse others." I've got here a quote. The fathers say, this is from the Archbishop Theophilus. He says, "The fathers say that there is no other way but this." In other words, to accuse yourself. And we see that no one at any time went another way and found rest. So when we are punished or dishonoured, all sorts of kinds of trouble, we should say, "I deserve it." And that's very hard to admit that. Say, "I actually deserve it." But then if we're living under God's providence, then we suddenly realise that all these things that come to us are given by God, allowed by God. God doesn't punish us. Any punishment is from ourselves, the way we react towards it. And there's a story about a young monk who was struggling with this problem of being offended so easily by the other brothers. And he went to an elder and said, "Well, what am I meant to do? How do I get round this one?" And he said, "Well, what I want you to do, I'm sure you know this story. I want you to go to the graveyard, and when you're there, I want you to curse and, say bad things to the people in the graves." So he went there, and I don't know what he said, but anyway, he went back to the elder, and the elder said, "What happened?" He said, "Nothing." He said, "Okay." He said, "Now this time, go back, and I want you to praise everybody that's buried there." So he went back and praised everybody. He went back to the elder. He said, "What happened?" The elder said, "Nothing." He said, "That's how you should be. Whether it's praise or dishonour or offence, we should be totally passive. Not out of disdain, not because we feel we're better, that person's so stupid, who cares? No. Because we should say, I deserve it." Now, how can we say, I deserve something? What happens if you're innocent? Somebody, curses you or says something and you're innocent. The fathers say, you may be innocent of that particular, whatever it is they're saying to you, but if you really examine your life and think about it, you will see that you actually deserve it. There's a story of St. Ephraim, the Syrian, you probably know this story as well. As a young man, he was out with some boys, one night they're going out and they were throwing stones at this peasant's cow. They threw so many stones that they actually killed the cow. Well, they were arrested. Somehow there was some, this is 4th century, 5th century. Police came and they caught him and they took him to jail, and they spent the night in jail and waited for the next day. Now, in those days the punishments were pretty awful, If you stole something, they chopped off your hand. And so there are various punishments for different things. And so, St. Ephraim is terrified at night, waiting, he started to pray. I mean, he didn't go to church very much. He was Orthodox, he was a Christian. But, he didn't he liked to go out with the lads, have a good time. So this time he's actually praying, and he said, "Please spare me. I'm innocent. I didn't." Actually, he wasn't involved in it. But he happened to he met the boys after they'd killed the cow, and so he was caught up. You know how this happens? Can happen to anybody. You're innocent, you're caught up in some sort of group.
Guilt by association.
By association, yeah, exactly. So anyway, he prayed about it and fell asleep, dreading the next day something nasty's going to happen to him, something physical, definitely. And in his sleep, an angel appeared to him and said to him, why are you worried about tomorrow? This is just punishment. So this is a dream, all right? In the dream he said, "Well, I didn't do anything." He says, "No, you didn't," he said, "but you did something before, which was far worse, and you just got away with it. So tomorrow the punishment is just because though you didn't do the act, you weren't involved with the boys, there is something in your life and you need to confess." Well, of course, how you can confess in a dream, I'm not quite sure, but he confessed, and the next day the judge was lenient. I don't know what happened, but he wasn't punished severely, physically, as the others were. After that, that sort of changed his life. That was a life-changing experience. Very close to losing a limb, something chopped off in those days, and now he's spared. So he then devoted himself to the church, where he became, of course, the famous father of the church. So I didn't do it, and therefore I should not be punished. We should be saying, I deserve it, and may God cover the sins that I can't remember. Yeah? Things that we haven't thought about because we're not even thinking about it, especially if we're not thinking about other people. And so things like that happen. We have to say, this is God's will. This is God's providence. So we need to have careful examination. We have to ask ourselves, why are we easily annoyed? Why are we easily annoyed? St. Abbot says, dig deep and you will always find a cause. So this is something we need to put into practice. We're offended by somebody, or we're very annoyed by all sorts of situations. Yeah, I find that person very annoying. You have to dig deep inside yourself and find out what is the cause. Why are you behaving like that? So you can let's use this excuse. If he had not annoyed me, I would not be at fault. This is to do with oneself. It's to do how you respond. It's in your disposition. This is delusion. This is false reasoning. Because a person's anger or bad mood already existed in that person, already inside. Abadorothere draws an analogy with winter wheat. I'm not quite sure why. He says that winter wheat looks good and ready to eat, but when you break it open, it's rotten inside. Well, now, let's not dwell on that because I don't know anything about winter wheat. Well, I know what it is, but I don't know why it would be rotten on the inside. The thing is that we have to dig deep. We have to find out what we're like inside. If we're being annoyed easily, it is because there's something wrong with our disposition. Rozpolożenie, our disposition. Some people are more prone to anger than others, and it's a passion. So okay, it's a passion, you have to recognize it. The important thing is to recognize it, and not to say, oh, well, it's somebody else's fault. I wouldn't be like that if I didn't have, these problems in life, these temptations. When we accept the situation, then we are given power by God to endure. And that's the beauty of it. We say, okay, I'm angry, I get annoyed easily, please forgive me, Lord, and let me help me to endure it. And then the power of grace works. Absolutely, it works on you. This is nothing that you have to do, because it comes from God. He gives another Abadorothere. This is based on Abadorothere's writings and some others. He talks about a beast of burden. He's talking about, the donkey or the mule. Of course, that comes very much to home recently, seeing mules. I was amazed by mules carrying sacks of cement up a stony path, up steps actually, a whole train of them, and they're carrying amazing weights. They're so strong, incredible. And if the mule falls, it gets up again. So it's carrying a lot of burden, and falls, but it just gets on with it, and gets up again and carries on. They're amazing animals. A great respect for them. I don't know what they're like temperamentally. I've heard they're not very nice, but the one that I was on didn't try to bite me, so that's a good sign. As a soul advances, as we advance spiritually, we become stronger. So when we endure other people's criticism or bad things that they do to us, we become stronger spiritually. And then eventually we have the power to bear anything. So we truly can say, I'm not bothered by this. Not because I don't care about the person, but because I'm not. Because everything's in God's plan. What happens to me is based on God's providence. On the other hand, if we don't deal with it, with this blaming others, anger, irritation, being annoyed, and we all are, we become weak spiritually. That's the opposite effect. And so the slightest thing will wear us down. So we know this expression, somebody is very touchy, very sensitive. This is a sin. This is a passion, to be highly super sensitive. People make excuses for people. Oh, well, they're very sensitive, that's why they're temperamental. This is not good. This is not a virtue, I should say. It is a sin, and it is a passion in the person. Artistic temperament, I think somebody talk about that. So if he's saying if a person advances spiritually, he will have peace. It becomes less and less to bear something. And so you find yourself not being offended by anything. That's a good state to be in, isn't it? Any of us have reached that yet? We'd like to, I'm sure we would like to. So it becomes less and less to bear. The opposite of trusting in God's providence is called depression. That's the opposite. When somebody believes in God's providence, then they have a disposition which is positive. This is real positive thinking, not a positive thinking in the sense of self-development. This is positive thinking because it's God-given, and nothing can get us down. I have met people like that who can't be disturbed at all. They only have a positive view of life. Very rare, Very rare, but I have met people like that. Manna in the desert. I've got that as a note. When the children of Israel, the Hebrews, were in the desert, they were fed with manna. God provided for them in the wilderness where they couldn't grow anything. But manna, and the thing about manna, the miraculous thing, is whatever you liked, well, within reason, of course, that's what you got. In other words, it wasn't wafers falling from the sky, although it's described like that, I think, in Exodus. But whatever you ate was what you needed. So let's think in the terms of what is good for your body, what you needed. So you couldn't turn a wafer into a nice steak with, garlic sauce or something on it. It wasn't something like that. But it was what you needed. And when they complained about it, then it became horrible, horrid food. The spell, the miracle was broken by complaining. And complaining that this is what we've got to eat.
Manna again.
Manna again, yes, on the menu. For breakfast, lunch and dinner. But as they say, it was different for each person. It was what they needed. And you say, when a man wants an egg, which I do at the moment, but only gets vegetables, he says that God would give it to him if it was necessary. I really would like an egg, but I can't get one. I mean, I'm not talking about fasting, I'm talking about the fact that you can't get one. And you say, well, there is nothing you can get one because God didn't allow it. It wasn't expedient for me. And here's an amazing story about a young novice who was called Dothise, and he was plagued by his thoughts because he was dying actually of tuberculosis, TB, and he'd heard from somebody that a soft-boiled egg could help his condition. But when he mentioned that to Abba Dorotheus, he said, he said, well, of course, you have an egg, of course you can. He says, but I don't want it. He said, because my thoughts are demanding it all the time, obsessive thinking about this, so therefore I don't want to give in to that. And so he didn't. And he died because he obviously was dying, but there was a faith there that if God wanted him to, not to die, to cure him of his tuberculosis, then he would. But if he didn't, then he would accept it. Acceptance. That takes a lot of courage, So we need to see the spiritual aspect of all things and every situation. So we evaluate something on a spiritual level. And this certainly applies to God's providence. Something didn't happen because it wasn't meant to. Well, some of us are older and know through life that we did things that we thought were, we wanted to do things which we thought was really what we should be doing, and it never happened. And we were disappointed, of course we were. But then in retrospect, it was God's providence. From my own perspective, I can say that if I followed what I wanted in life, I would never be a priest. It was stopped. And I complained. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but I complained about it. I was not very happy that I was not being able to do what I wanted to do. But it's God's... I'm discovering now, probably a bit late now, but it's God's providence, yeah? If I'd have followed my career path, or if I'd have followed gone to Paris Institute, Theological Institute, I would not be here. So this is God's providence. And the same applies to you. Each one of you here tonight is in God's providence. And when you start seeing things spiritually, and you don't have to say, what am I meant to do? You just say, God, as God gives, cut, bulk, dust. Hard, very hard. It takes a lot of courage to say, okay, well, I trust God. And then things go wrong, and then what do? We have
crash.
Crash. Well, we have to continue to say, well, this. I don't like what's happening to me, but I know there's got a meaning, and I can't see it at the moment. Abba Zosimus, another desert father, says, "We have left the straight road of blaming ourselves and have taken the crooked road of blaming our neighbour." Two young monks, a brother and sister, two brothers, monks, an older brother and a younger one, okay, and they complained to one of the fathers saying, "This young one, he doesn't respect me. I mean, I'm older and I'm, and I organise everything in the monastery, but he doesn't take any notice of me, he doesn't respect me. And, he seems to have no confidence in me, so he's complaining." So he went to the young one and said, "Well, what is this? Why are you being disrespectful to your brother, older brother?" He said, "Well, I just don't have respect for him, that's all. I don't have any confidence in him." And he's saying, "Well, yeah, okay, well, do you not see that both of you are wrong? You're both wrong. You should have confidence in your younger brother. You should trust him because it's God's will. That doesn't mean to say that he has to be nice to you all the time. That's nothing to do with that. And the same the other way around is that the older brother must respect the younger, and the younger the older." This is an example that they give. They're called the willful monks. Now, a terrible story, Matushka knows this quite well, about a desert father who was very ill, and his disciple wanted to help him, so he served him some food, beans, whatever, yeah. And instead of putting olive oil on it, he put on linseed oil. If you know what that is. Well, I don't recommend drinking it because you won't be able to. It's used for cleaning furniture and for staining wood. I like the smell, it's like turpentine, but it's not what you put on your food. Anyway, he put it on the food and the elder ate it. In fact, he even asked for some more. And then suddenly the disciple, "I've killed, my God, I have killed you. Why didn't you say something? This is poison, Well, it is poison, of course, you drink it." And he said, no, don't worry. He said, "It's okay, it's all right. Do not fret yourself." He said, "Because if I wasn't meant to have it, God would not have allowed it." He said, "Or God would have changed the linseed oil into olive oil." Remember that? No. Second book of Samuel, chapter 16, verses 10 and 12. I won't go into the story, it's quite complex actually. King David, and King David was there was a civil war between him and his son. And David was actually losing the battle. And he went into a city, and this man came and started throwing stones at him and cursing him. And people wanted to obviously stop the man, actually kill him for doing that to the king. And the king said no. He said, because he's allowed to curse me, he curses me and throws stones at me because God allows it. But I ask God to please, for all my sins and everything I've done wrong, to forgive me and make this for my repentance. In other words, this is what he's saying, is that something bad happens to you, and you ask God to make it, you do something wrong, okay? And you turn to God in repentance, and you ask God to accept what you've done wrong as to cover many things. Doesn't make sense, does it? No. Yes.
Question, Father.
Yeah.
So how does one discern when it's the will of God? There are certain faiths out there that say, okay, man gets run over by a truck and they say, that's karma. He had that coming to him, and stay away from him because you don't want any of that rubbing off on you. But I mean, you have other faiths or cultures that say, inshallah, it's God's will.
God's will. Yeah.
That my car ran out of gas. You have Christian churches that say, we're not going to take our children in to have any sort of medical treatment because it's God's will that they be sick or they be well.
Good point. Good question, yes.
Where do we draw the line between faith and foolhardiness?
Well, for a start, we don't generalize.
Okay.
We do not generalize. Each person is different, and God's response to us, because he loves us as individuals, individual people, that it depends on the situation. You can't have some set rules on how to behave in certain circumstances. But when you, and also, you see, when we accuse ourselves, now this of course is terrible to say, I accuse myself in the modern age when you're meant to be full of your own self-esteem, full of steam. You know, this sounds really outrageous, but this is necessary, and each person is precious in God's sight. Each person, each one of us is precious, and God will show us what we have to do. So you can't have some blanket thing that covers everything. I'm not going to have my children vaccinated because I don't believe in this. And you know, when if they die, that's God's will. Well, that's true. It is. It is God's will. It is God's will. How does it apply to you? That's what we should be concerned with. Now back to this King David. I'm sorry I'm making a mess of this. King David said, "Let him curse and throw stones, because the Lord has said to him, curse David." Oh, that's right. Yes, the prophet said, curse David, so he did it. So you're not going to punish him because God told him to curse him. Not that David, you know, and of course everybody was shocked, cursing the king, and they wanted to kill him. He said, no. He said, God has said it, so I have to accept it as it is. And you can read that for yourself in the book of Samuel, second book of Samuel, which is King, in Orthodox, what is it? King 4, yes. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
So what you meant is that
Kings 2.
You what?
Kings 2.
Kings 2.
Yeah. Kings 1 and 2 or 3 and 4.
Well, I know there's 4, but I don't know which book. Yeah, Samuel is 2, is it? Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions?
you were saying, I think what you were saying about David is that when he accepted that punishment, he asked God to accept it for his sins.
Yes, for previous things that he'd done wrong. Please apply that to this.
Yeah.
Okay? And God did. So we'll finish up with saying we should let us accuse oneself and be critical of one's spiritual progress. And to see the spiritual aspect of all things in our work, our studies, relationships, see it in the spiritual aspect, not in the secular, sinful view of people.